Welcome to the Sports Trading Card Hall of Fame. Today I want to talk about Story of Cardboard of Topps Finest. And I'm not talking about a specific year for Topps Finest. I'm talking about Topps Finest, the brand. This is a brand that became the standard bearer, the front runner for the mid-90s sports card evolution. It was a high watermark that eventually got replaced in a way that is really very natural in evolution. Evolution of any sort of technology, any sort of fashion, etc. It was highly innovative, and then, well, because it didn't keep getting reinvented, it kind of got surpassed as everything else caught up. But it was so innovative that it took quite a few years for the industry to catch up and to surpass it. So it is unusual in just how impressive it was when it came out. And it was very critical for Topps, because Topps has always been a card company that operates with, shall we say, the path of least resistance. They have always tried to do the bare minimum and just kind of churn along, which has provided them with the ability to be unbelievably reliable. It also means they don't like to innovate. They don't like to take a chance. They like to sit down, just churn it out, let everything kind of run its own course, and, well, cash checks. And for the most part, that has tended to work. Anytime there's competition, you start to see Topps get uncomfortable and have to try to earn their place. But in the 1980s, things were not quite working that way with them. They got caught sleeping. And they ended up getting essentially surpassed in every single sport, or all three sports that they were in, and they had to completely rebuild. Because in the 1980s, even though there was Fleer and Don Russ, all three companies did pretty much the same thing. Then they had Sportflix, which wasn't competition. Then they had Score, which was competition, and was something to really kind of think about. And then Upper Deck hit, and by 1989, well, okay, now Topps was starting to find themselves put into a bit of a corner. Now, they were relying on the fact that in baseball, it's all about tradition. And Topps is tradition, and so that meant that every year with Topps, that was the standard card. That was the key card to collect. And Score wasn't really all that difficult to compete with. They weren't quite innovating yet. 1990 you would start to see them making a major change. But Upper Deck in 1989, they were definitely showing that Topps needed to pay attention. But in 1990, when, like I said, Score made a significant leap forward, and you had Leaf that was added to the picture, now Topps was really starting to be, they were starting to be in a place where they were going to have to rethink things. And they weren't quite ready to do that yet, because they were still making tons of money. Even in 1991, they couldn't sell enough packs. But the industry had surpassed them, especially over in football. And so they needed to do something. In 1991, they added Stadium Club in order to be able to be there with the front runners. But they were so far surpassed that they needed to rebuild the model. And in 1992, they did three things that really showed that they had finally hit the panic button and were starting to think very much outside the box. The easiest one to recognize is Topps Gold, the parallel of the main Topps set. They also took Bowman and completely reconfigured it by printing at a very rare rate and making very high quality cards. But it was the third one, which was Topps Finest. That was a whole nother conversation. And for the sports card industry, they had just gotten premium cards in 1991 for the entire industry. 1992, there was a marked increase in the quality of Upper Deck, to an extent of Pinnacle, definitely of Ultra. And so you were seeing the industry basically kind of settle into this premium brand world, and they were going to carry this for a while, except Topps sent out a preliminary shot with a test set of Finest cards that showed the entire industry, look, something insane is coming and you better be ready. And so 1993, everybody was ready. You had Flair for representing Fleer. You had Select representing Score.
you had SP representing Upper Deck, and you had Prism that was representing Pacific. So all of those brands were now showing that the industry was going to be taking this seriously. They were going to be standing right alongside Topps. Only none of the brands could match up with what Topps had created. They created something that was a super expensive card that had a quality that was unlike any cards anywhere. I mean, even Collector's Edge wasn't quite as exotic as Finest cards, and the pack prices definitely fit this. I mean, Topps was not at all interested in selling cards to kids. These packs were jaw-dropping for anybody, but especially for young collectors, where you just go, can I even waste my money on that? There was so much money that had to go into each individual pack. It was daunting. But Topps understood something that you see in automobiles and in wine, and you have multiple different tiers of products, and you don't make money off the really high-end products. You just don't. You make it off of the general products in the middle. It's off of your sedans, not your luxury vehicles. That's where you make your money. In wine, you get a really high expensive wine that is all fancy, so that the whole company has that brand identity, so that you can sell a bunch of box wines, a bunch of jug wines. That's the stuff that makes the money. And it's the same thing in sports cards. You don't make a set like SPX in order to make money off of SPX. You do it because Upper Deck looks more impressive and more valuable as a part of that. And so you have Finest in 1993, and everybody knows, okay, Topps Finest is the big set. That means Topps is the big company. Now everything that Topps creates it seems more important to collectors. That's the model. And that's what Finest did. Topps understood how to make a simple change for a very complex card in order to improve the entire company, not with quality, not with design, but with perception. That was the key. And for years, they would be the gold standard. Now, by 1995, you were seeing like Select Certified that was now catching up. And then in 1996, you had SPX, which arguably surpassed the Topps Finest set for 1996. And in 1997, it was now, especially with Pinnacle Totally Certified, now you were definitely starting to see Finest be surpassed. And by 1998, not only was SPX an improvement over Finest in terms of hierarchy, but Topps released Topps Gold Label. I mean, Finest had its role in the mid-90s of being the standard bearer, and then by the late 90s, you saw sets that had surpassed it, and Finest was the line, the high watermark. And so when a card set was more impressive than that, when it was more valuable than that, that was the kind of card set you stop and go, whoa, okay, that's an impressive set. But Finest was kind of like the Ford Taurus, where Ford developed the Taurus and in the mid-1980s, and it was sleek, it was cutting edge, it was rounded, it was everything other cars were not. And like I said with wine and with other examples, Ford became the company that was innovating for sedans, and it helped the entire car company really succeed. But then they put their innovation into other products, and they just let the Ford Taurus go its own route and sell its own cars, and then eventually it became the old Cadre product line where other product lines were now innovative, and so it faded away. That's the way that companies operate. You put all of your work into getting something started, and then you don't necessarily have to keep reinventing it, because you can do that in other places and you just kind of milk it. Topps most certainly did that. By 1996, they had Topps Chrome, so they didn't need Topps Finest to hold the company up. I mean, they even had Bowman's Best, which in 1994 and 1995 was an improvement over Finest, relatively speaking. But even that kind of faded away, and so as the years went on, Topps Chrome became more important, and like I said, they got Topps Gold Label. There were other things that they were able to go out and do that were really special and exotic. And Finest by 1999 was just kind of a general set in terms of how they built it. It was still an impressive set and an expensive set, That, I definitely don't mean to belittle the brand at all, but it was not a shade of what it had meant earlier on. And as we got into the new millennium, it was Topps Chrome that really held Topps up, and Finest kind of made its way. Not as bad as Bowman's Best. Bowman's Best fell apart. But Topps Finest was just a reliable card set year after year after year. And even over at Upper Deck, their SPX sets in the new millennium had a tough time finding their place, because they were both sets that were developed in the early to mid 1990s. And that was the role that they played. They came out and they made an important contribution to the industry, and they drove the industry for a while. But while SPX had a shorter window of time where it was at its height and then it just kind of got lost, Finest had a longer period of time where it was able to be, if not the greatest card released every year, it was among the very best and most impressive. And that was a success for Topps for sure, but it also really helped the whole industry evolve over time, starting with the fact that in 1993 there were cards on the card shop shelves that were something that everybody else in the card industry looked at and said, we got to be doing that. Whatever that is, we've got to do our equivalent of it. And they slowly but surely worked their way up. And you can thank brands like SPX and EX2000. These are card brands that were created because of the high level of design and innovation that Topps had created in Finest. So it was a really, really important set to be released, an important card technology, an important card. And for Topps, it was a huge success, because once they got the Finest cards to work, then they made Bowman's Best. Then they made Topps Chrome. They tried Stadium Club Chrome. That didn't really work. But Topps Chrome, let's just say, that was very much a great product of the innovation of Finest that happened in 1992. So that's the story that I wanted to talk about with Finest here. It is definitely one of the most important cards of all time, and that's primarily because of just how unique it was at the time it came out, that helped to inspire the entire card industry. Now, if you have any stories about when these came out and how amazing it was, definitely let me know in the comments below. Put those stories down there and have a bit of a discussion about it. And if you haven't subscribed already, definitely go ahead and do so. These stories about sports cards, I love telling them every single week. So definitely check out the other videos. And thank you very much for watching.